Sarah Martinez clutched the old brass key in her trembling hand as she stood before the imposing Gothic mansion. The inheritance letter from her great-aunt Millicent, whom she'd never met, had arrived 3 weeks ago with specific instructions. Come to Ravenshollow Manor on the night of the new moon. Trust no one. The family curse must end with you. The wrought iron gates groaned as Sarah pushed them open, their rusty hinges protesting against years of neglect. Overgrown ivy strangled the fence posts, and dead roses lined the cobblestone path. Each step echoed ominously in the evening silence, broken only by the distant howl of wind through bare branches. The wrought iron gates groaned as Sarah pushed them open, their rusty hinges protesting against years of neglect. Overgrown ivy strangled the fence posts, and dead roses lined the cobblestone path. Each step echoed ominously in the evening silence, broken only by the distant howl of wind through bare branches. As she approached the front door, Sarah noticed the mansion's windows were all dark, except for one, a small attic window that flickered with an unnatural red glow. The door itself was massive, carved from dark oak, and adorned with symbols she didn't recognize. Ancient Latin words were etched into the frame. Sanguis vocant, mortui audient. Blood calls, the dead listen. The key turned surprisingly easily, and the door swung open with a sound like a dying breath. The foyer was shrouded in darkness, but Sarah's flashlight revealed a grand staircase that curved upward into shadow. Portraits lined the walls, dozens of them, all depicting members of the Martinez family from centuries past. Their eyes seemed to follow her movement. "Hello?" Sarah called out, her voice echoing through the empty halls. "Is anyone here?" The only response was the settling of old wood and the distant ticking of a grandfather clock somewhere deep within the house. Sarah found a bedroom on the second floor that seemed less decrepit than the others. The four-poster bed was covered in dust, but the mattress appeared sound. She lit several candles from her bag. The electricity had been turned off years ago, and began to settle in for the night. As she unpacked, Sarah discovered a leather-bound journal hidden in the nightstand drawer. The first entry was dated 50 years ago, written in her great-aunt's familiar handwriting. "The voices are getting louder. They want me to complete the ritual, but I refuse. The family bloodline must end with me, or the curse will consume another generation. I've hidden the truth in these pages. May whoever reads this have the strength I lack." Sarah flipped through more pages, finding increasingly disturbing entries about family members who had died under mysterious circumstances, always on the night of the new moon. The final entry made her blood run cold. "They're in the walls now. I can hear them scratching, calling my name. The red room in the attic is where it all began. The ritual circle is still there, waiting. I've hidden the amulet that can break the curse. Find it before midnight on the new moon, or you'll become one of them forever." A sudden scratching sound from within the walls made Sarah drop the journal. The sound moved around the room, inside the plaster, between the wooden beams. Something was moving in there. Something with claws. "Who's there?" she whispered, but the scratching stopped abruptly. The candles flickered despite the lack of any breeze, and the temperature in the room suddenly dropped. Sarah's breath became visible in small puffs of condensation. Then she heard it, a low, mournful wailing that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Unable to sleep after the disturbing events, Sarah explored the mansion's library. Shelves towered from floor to ceiling, filled with ancient tomes and family records. She pulled out volume after volume, piecing together the dark history of the Martinez lineage. The first Martinez to own Ravenshollow Manor was Don Eduardo Martinez, a Spanish nobleman who arrived in New England in 1692. According to the records, he had fled Spain under mysterious circumstances, carrying with him a collection of occult artifacts and forbidden knowledge. Eduardo had been involved with a secret society in Seville that practiced blood magic, rituals designed to commune with entities from beyond death. When the Spanish Inquisition began investigating their activities, Eduardo stole their most powerful artifact, the Crimson Amulet of Eternal Binding. The amulet allowed its bearer to bind the spirits of the dead to their will, but at a terrible cost. Every use of its power required a blood sacrifice from the family lineage. Eduardo had established the ritual chamber in the mansion's attic, where he could perform the ceremonies that kept him young and powerful for over a century. But the power came with a curse. Every Martinez descendant would be called to continue the rituals, or face death on their 30th birthday. Those who refused to participate would join the growing army of family spirits trapped within the mansion's walls. Sarah realized with growing horror that her 30th birthday was tomorrow, the night of the new moon. She had to find the amulet and break the curse, or she would either become a killer like her ancestors, or die and join the trapped spirits. Following clues from her great-aunt's journal, Sarah ventured into the servants' quarters in search of the hidden amulet. The narrow staircase leading to the lower levels creaked ominously under her weight, and the air grew thick and oppressive. The servants' rooms told their own story of horror. In each small chamber, Sarah found evidence of the staff who had worked in the mansion over the centuries and how they had died. Scratch marks on doors, dark stains on floors, and personal belongings scattered as if their owners had fled in panic. In the kitchen, she found the cook's journal from 1847. The entries described how the family would disappear for hours into the attic during new moon nights, and how servants who investigated would vanish entirely. The final entry was written in a shaking hand. "Master called me to the Red Room tonight. I know I'll not see dawn. If anyone finds this, know that the Martinez family are no longer human. They feed on blood and soul, and they've made a pact with things that should not exist." The screaming from the walls, "God help us all." As Sarah read, the temperature plummeted again. Her breath misted in the suddenly frigid air, and she could hear the scratching sounds returning, but now they were coming from multiple directions. The spirits trapped in the walls were growing restless. The journal mentioned a secret passage in the cellar that led to a hidden vault where Eduardo had stored his most dangerous artifacts. Sarah descended into the mansion's depths, her flashlight beam barely penetrating the oppressive darkness. The cellar was a maze of stone corridors and chambers, some carved from living rock. Ancient wine racks lined the walls, but instead of bottles, they held clay jars sealed with wax. Sarah opened one and immediately recoiled. It contained what looked like preserved human organs floating in a dark liquid. She followed the corridor deeper underground until she reached a circular chamber carved with the same symbols she'd seen throughout the mansion. In the center stood an altar made of black stone, its surface stained with centuries of dried blood. Behind the altar, hidden by a false wall, Sarah found Eduardo's secret vault. Inside were dozens of occult artifacts, spellbooks written in languages she couldn't identify, and finally a small wooden box containing the Crimson Amulet of Eternal Binding. The moment her fingers touched the amulet, visions flooded her mind. She saw Eduardo performing the first ritual in 1693, sacrificing a young servant girl to bind her spirit to his will. She witnessed generation after generation of Martinez family members, forced to continue the tradition or die. But she also saw something else, the weakness in the curse. The amulet could only bind spirits if they were killed during the ritual. Those who died fighting back, who died with defiance rather than fear, could not be bound. They became free spirits, able to help break the curse. Armed with this knowledge, Sarah began calling out to the spirits trapped in the mansion. She walked through the halls, speaking to the walls where she heard scratching and movement. "I know you're there," she said. "I know you were murdered by my family. Help me break this curse, and you'll be free." Slowly, the spirits began to manifest. First came Maria Santos, the young servant girl from 1693, Eduardo's first victim. Her throat bore the mark where the ritual knife had cut her, but her eyes burned with righteous anger. More spirits appeared: James Fletcher, the groundskeeper from 1743, Anna Morrison, the governess from 1798, Thomas Wright, the stable boy from 1834. Dozens of them, all victims of the Martinez family's blood rituals over the centuries. "They grow stronger every new moon," Maria explained, her voice echoing as if from a great distance. "The living Martinez feeds them power through murder. But tomorrow night, if no blood is spilled, the curse will break and they'll lose control over us." Sarah realized the truth. Her great-aunt Millicent hadn't refused to perform the ritual out of weakness. She had starved the curse for 50 years, weakening the demonic forces that Eduardo had summoned. Tomorrow night would be the final test. As midnight approached, Sarah noticed new phenomena in the mansion. Dark shadows began moving independently of any light source, creeping along walls and gathering in corners. These weren't the spirits of murdered victims. These were something far more sinister. The shadow people were the entities that Eduardo had originally summoned in Spain. Demons from a realm beyond death who fed on human suffering and blood. They had been bound to the Martinez family through the crimson amulet, growing stronger with each ritual sacrifice. "They know you have the amulet," Maria warned as the shadows began to circle Sarah. "They'll try to force you to complete the ritual. If they can't, they'll kill you and find another way to continue the curse." The shadows whispered in languages that predated human civilization, promising Sarah power beyond imagination if she would just perform one small ritual. They showed her visions of wealth, immortality, and dominion over life and death. But Sarah had read her great-aunt's journal. She knew that every Martinez who had accepted the Shadow's bargain had eventually become their slave, forced to kill family members to maintain their unnatural existence. As her 30th birthday arrived with the new moon, Sarah climbed to the attic ritual chamber. The room was exactly as her great-aunt had described: a circular space with walls covered in occult symbols, a stone altar in the center, and candles that lit themselves as she entered. The shadows followed her, growing more solid and threatening with each step. By the time she reached the attic, they had taken on almost human form. Tall, gaunt figures with burning red eyes and claws like razors. "Complete the ritual," they commanded in unison. "Spill blood on the altar, and you will live forever, as we have promised your family for centuries." Sarah saw that a knife had been placed on the altar, the same ceremonial blade that had killed dozens of innocent people. Its surface was stained black with old blood, and it seemed to pulse with malevolent energy. The ghosts of the murdered victims appeared around the edges of the chamber, watching silently. Sarah realized this was the moment of choice that had faced every Martinez for over 3 centuries. Kill an innocent to live, or die and join the ranks of the cursed. But Sarah had found a third option in her great-aunt's research. Instead of picking up the knife, Sarah raised the crimson amulet of eternal binding above her head. The stone began to glow with inner fire, and the symbols carved into the chamber walls responded with their own eerie light. "I break this curse not through murder or death," she declared, "but through sacrifice of another kind. I give up my claim to the Martinez bloodline. I renounce my family name and all ties to this cursed lineage." The shadows recoiled as if burned, their forms becoming less solid. The amulet's power had been based on family blood binding. By renouncing her heritage, Sarah was severing the connection that allowed the demons to remain in the physical world. "You cannot," the shadows shrieked. "The blood debt must be paid. The ritual must continue." but the spirits of the murdered victims were growing brighter, more solid. As the demonic influence weakened, their own power increased. Maria Santos stepped forward, her ghostly form blazing with righteous fury. "We have waited centuries for this moment," Maria said. "The blood debt will be paid, but not by the innocent. You will answer for every life you have stolen." The chamber erupted into supernatural warfare as the freed spirits attacked their demonic captors. Centuries of rage and pain fueled their assault as they fought to destroy the entities that had enslaved them. Sarah watched in awe as Maria Santos grappled with the largest shadow demon, her ghostly form blazing like a star. Other spirits joined the battle. James Fletcher wielding spectral gardening tools, Anna Morrison protecting the chamber's exit, Thomas Wright using his knowledge of the mansion's layout to outmaneuver the demons. The shadows fought back with claws and dark magic, but they had been weakened by Sarah's renunciation of the bloodline. Without fresh sacrifices to feed them, they were no match for the combined fury of their victims. One by one, the shadow demons were torn apart by ghostly hands, their essence scattered to whatever hellish realm had spawned them. Their dying screams shook the mansion's foundations, cracking walls and shattering windows. As the last demon fell, the crimson amulet of eternal binding cracked down the middle. The red stone that had powered centuries of evil split apart, its malevolent energy dissipating into nothingness. With the curse broken and the demons destroyed, the spirits of the murdered victims began to fade, not into nothingness, but into peaceful rest. They had been trapped for centuries, but now they were free to move on to whatever lay beyond death. Maria Santos was the last to go. She approached Sarah with a gentle smile, her form becoming more translucent with each moment. "Thank you," she whispered. "You succeeded where generations of your family failed. You chose compassion over power, sacrifice over selfishness." "What about the mansion?" Sarah asked. "What about all the evil that happened here?" "It dies with us," Maria replied. "The house was just stone and wood. The curse gave it power. Now it's just an old building that can finally rest." As the spirits departed, Sarah felt a profound sense of peace settle over Ravenshollow Manor. The oppressive atmosphere that had weighed on the mansion for centuries lifted like fog in sunlight. Sarah spent the remaining hours until dawn cleaning the mansion and gathering any remaining evidence of the curse. She found family records, occult artifacts, and ritual implements that she carefully destroyed to ensure they could never be used again. As the sun rose, she stood in the mansion's garden and watched the morning light transform Ravenshollow Manor from a place of horror into simply an old house. The Gothic architecture remained imposing, but it no longer radiated malevolence. She had decided to donate the property to the local historical society with the stipulation that it be converted into a memorial for victims of violence. The Martinez family's wealth would finally serve a noble purpose. Before leaving, Sarah buried the broken pieces of the crimson amulet beneath the old oak tree in the garden. She spoke a simple prayer for all the victims, both the murdered innocents and the Martinez family members who had been corrupted by power. When Sarah contacted the authorities about the mansion and its history, Detective Michael Rodriguez was assigned to investigate her claims. Initially skeptical, he became convinced when Sarah led him to the hidden cellar chamber containing Eduardo's artifacts and the preserved remains of ritual victims. The discovery made national headlines: centuries-old serial murders uncovered in historic mansion. Forensic experts identified the remains of dozens of victims dating back to the colonial period, finally giving closure to families whose ancestors had mysteriously disappeared. Dr. Elizabeth Harper, a historian specializing in colonial-era occultism, was brought in to authenticate the artifacts and documents. Her research confirmed Sarah's account of the Martinez family's involvement with blood magic and demon summoning. This is one of the most significant archaeological discoveries in American history, Dr. Harper told reporters. It provides unprecedented insight into how European occult practices influenced early colonial settlements. Sarah cooperated fully with the investigation, providing all the family records and journals she had discovered. She testified about her experiences in the mansion, though investigators naturally remained skeptical of the supernatural elements of her story. The story of Ravenshollow Manor captured public imagination worldwide. Documentary filmmakers, paranormal investigators, and true crime podcasters descended on the small New England town where the mansion stood. Sarah found herself reluctantly thrust into the spotlight as the sole surviving Martinez heir who had exposed the family's dark secrets. She gave carefully measured interviews, focusing on the historical facts while avoiding detailed discussion of the supernatural events she had witnessed. "I believe that evil thrives in secrecy," she told CNN. "By bringing these crimes to light, we honor the victims and ensure that such horrors can never happen again." The mansion became a macabre tourist destination, though Sarah had insisted on strict limitations. Visitors could tour the main floors with guides, but the attic ritual chamber and cellar were permanently sealed off. All proceeds from tours went to a victims' rights organization that Sarah had established with her inherent money. She had no desire to profit from her family's crimes. The Martinez case became a subject of intense academic interest. Historians, anthropologists, and religious scholars collaborated to study the unique blend of Spanish occultism, colonial American history, and serial murder that the family had practiced. Professor James Mitchell from Harvard's Divinity School published a definitive study titled "Blood and Binding: Occult Practices in Colonial America." His research placed the Martinez family's activities in the broader context of how European magical traditions had evolved in the New World. The Martinez family represents a unique case study in how occult beliefs could persist and evolve across centuries. Professor Mitchell explained in his book, "Their ritualistic murders weren't random violence. They were systematic attempts to maintain supernatural power through blood sacrifice." Dr. Sarah Chen, a forensic anthropologist from Yale, led the effort to identify and properly inter the victims found in the mansion's hidden chambers. Using advanced DNA analysis and historical records, her team was able to identify 17 individuals and return their remains to surviving family members. Dr. Amanda Foster, a criminal psychologist specializing in family-based violence, conducted an extensive analysis of the Martinez family psychology. Her research explored how the curse had functioned as a form of inherited trauma that shaped family behavior across generations. What we see with the Martinez family is a perfect example of how violence can become institutionalized within a family structure. Dr. Foster explained in her published study, each generation was conditioned to accept murder as necessary for survival. Her research identified several Martinez family members who had attempted to resist the pattern, including Sarah's great-aunt, Millicent. These individuals had developed what Dr. Foster termed moral resistance, the psychological strength to break cycles of inherited violence. Sarah Martinez represents the ultimate success of this moral resistance, Dr. Foster wrote. By choosing to sacrifice her family identity rather than perpetuate the violence, she demonstrated that even the strongest patterns of inherited trauma can be broken through conscious choice. The psychological study became required reading in criminology programs, illustrating how family-based criminal enterprises could persist across centuries through a combination of fear, tradition, and perceived supernatural obligation. Religious leaders from multiple faiths came together to perform cleansing ceremonies at Ravenshollow Manor. Father Miguel Santos, a descendant of Maria Santos, the first victim, led a Catholic blessing, while Rabbi Sarah Goldman conducted prayers for the victims' souls. Reverend John Blackfeather of the local Native American community explained that the land itself had been wounded by centuries of violence. "The earth remembers blood," he said during the ceremony. "We must heal not just the building, but the ground beneath it." The Wiccan community, led by High Priestess Luna Morrison, descendant of Governess Anna Morrison, performed their own ritual to neutralize any remaining negative energy. They planted native flowers and herbs known for their cleansing properties throughout the mansion's garden. "Dark magic leaves scars on the spiritual landscape," explained Luna Morrison. "Our work here is to heal those scars and restore natural balance to this place." Sarah participated in all the ceremonies, finding comfort in the diverse spiritual approaches to healing. She had never been particularly religious, but the experience of breaking the curse had given her a deep appreciation for the power of faith and community. A team of parapsychologists from Duke University's Rhine Research Center conducted an extensive study of Ravenshollow Manor to document any residual supernatural activity. Led by Dr. Robert Chen, the team used electromagnetic field detectors, thermal imaging, and audio recording equipment to search for evidence of paranormal phenomena. "Initially, we detected significant electromagnetic anomalies throughout the building," Dr. Chen reported. "However, after the cleansing ceremonies and the breaking of what locals call the curse, these readings returned to normal baseline levels." The team's final report concluded that while they couldn't scientifically verify the supernatural aspects of Sarah's account, the mansion had definitely undergone some kind of fundamental change. "Whatever was causing the unusual energy signatures in this building has been neutralized," Dr. Chen stated. This scientific validation helped legitimize the spiritual cleansing work and provided additional closure for the community. The mansion was officially declared free of any paranormal activity, with the mansion's dark history exposed and its supernatural influence broken. Sarah worked with local officials to transform the grounds into a memorial garden, honoring the victims of the Martinez family's crimes. The garden design incorporated elements from different cultural traditions, reflecting the diverse backgrounds of the victims identified through Dr. Chen's forensic work. A central monument listed the names of all known victims, while smaller markers throughout the garden provided spaces for reflection and remembrance. Local schools began bringing students to the memorial as part of their history curriculum, using the site to teach about the dangers of unchecked power and the importance of breaking cycles of violence. This place now serves as a reminder that good can triumph over evil, said Principal Janet Miller from the local high school. Sarah Martinez's courage in exposing her family's crimes shows that we all have the power to make moral choices, regardless of our family history. The transformation from a place of horror to a place of healing and education represented the complete victory over the Martinez family curse. 6 months after the events at Ravenshollow Manor, Sarah had built a new life in San Francisco. She legally changed her name to Sarah Mendoza, her mother's maiden name, and used her inheritance to establish the Ravenshollow Foundation, dedicated to helping survivors of family violence. Working with therapists, Sarah had processed her traumatic experience and emerged stronger. She spoke regularly at conferences about breaking cycles of family violence, though she kept the supernatural elements of her story private. "I learned that we are not prisoners of our family history," she would tell audiences. "We have the power to choose who we become, regardless of who our ancestors were." Her work with the foundation brought her into contact with other survivors of generational trauma, people from families with histories of abuse, addiction, and violence, who had found the strength to break destructive patterns. Sarah found particular satisfaction in working with young people from troubled families, helping them recognize that they had options beyond repeating their parents' mistakes. 2 years after the events at Ravenshollow Manor, acclaimed documentary filmmaker Maria Gonzalez approached Sarah about creating a film about the Martinez family case. Initially reluctant, Sarah agreed when she learned that all profits would go to victim advocacy organizations. The documentary, titled Breaking the Chain, The Ravenshollow Manor Story, premiered at the Sundance Film Festival and won the award for Best Documentary Feature. The film focused on the historical aspects of the case, while treating Sarah's personal account with respectful skepticism. Whether you believe in curses or not, the film's narrator concluded, this story reminds us that the true horror lies in the choices we make and the courage to break free from the past.